On Larry K. Now, entrepreneur and billionaire Tilman Fertitta.
You got to know what you're good at, and God gave us all a gift. And I sure wasn't going to win a Grammy. I took guitar lessons for 4 years and still struggled to play a chord. I wasn't going to do a lot of things. I sure can't draw anything, but you know what? I knew that I had a DNA gene of business.
Plus,
With these podcasts and social media today, if you're not on top of it, you can't grow any brand today. The old means of just advertising on television or billboards is behind the times.
it's all next on Larry King Now. Welcome to Larry King Now. Our guest today is American businessman, entrepreneur Tilman Fertitta. He is chairman and CEO of Landry's Incorporated. That's one of the largest restaurant corporations in America. Forbes called him the world's richest restaurateur. He also owns the Houston Rockets, and he starred in his own CNBC series, Billion Dollar Buyer. He released a book recently titled Shut Up and Listen. The book is currently available online and in stores. Other than that, he hasn't done much with his life. What do you mean by shut up and listen?
You know, it's really funny is Harper Collins approached me about 18 months ago and said, you know, Tilman, we watch your TV show and we see you on all these business shows and sports shows and we read these articles and we love all these Tilmanisms and we don't want you to write a life story, but we love these little one-liners that you use and we love the way you go so direct at people to help them grow their business and we'd like you to just talk about that. Not stories, not a life story, but the basics. It's take the word no out of your damn vocabulary. It's there are no spare customers. It's change. It's things like that. You have to know your numbers. And this is it's an easy reading book and it really gets to the basics.
How did you come up with Tilmanisms?
You know, I didn't come up with it, but people that I do business with and investment bankers, we would be in negotiations and and I would just always throw these out and they just kind of caught on. And so when I wrote the book, I called everybody up. I said, y'all write down all my Tilmanisms because, you know, y'all always talk about my Tilmanisms and I don't want to forget any of them. So there's a whole page of just Tilmanisms in there.
Why the restaurant business?
It's kind of interesting is I was in Texas in the 80s and if you remember the 80s, the world fell apart. And that's when all the banks failed. And I had invested in one restaurant, Larry, and you couldn't do anything. The building just shut down. There was no development. And so I bought out all my partners and I said, well, I'll just go grow restaurants for a few years since there's no development happening. And that's what I did. And then in the early 90s, that's when all the companies started going public. That was the big stock market boom. If you remember when Clinton came in, where they even got rid of the national debt because of all the capital gains. But that's when like Chili's and Outback and Cheesecake Factory and Lone Star and Landry's, we all went public. And all of a sudden you wake up one day, you have 12 restaurants, but because of your growth rate, you're worth $100 million. And so for the next 20 years, I was basically public. And then when the crisis happened again in 08, 09, I saw an opportunity because my stock was down to go private again, owning 100%, and that's what I've done since then.
Restaurant business is one of the toughest. You don't get a second chance. People don't want to go back if the food ain't good.
You do not get a second chance. It's amazing how even a restaurant can be brand new and people will not give it that second opportunity.
Also, people tell me that the restaurant business is the toughest business to run from afar. How can you run 18 restaurants?
Well, I'll run 600.
How can you?
You know, it's systems and controls, and you've got to have a strong culture, and you've got to have a good HR department. And I've been successful because not only do I open up a lot of restaurants, I've bought a lot of restaurant companies because upstairs the management wasn't doing a good job. I mean, just in the LA area, look at all the restaurant companies that I own. Everything from Mastro's to Catch to Martin's to Bubba Gump to Rainforest to...
You own Catch?
Yes, I own 50% of Catch.
Not
Absolutely.
doing bad.
Not doing bad at all. Either is that Mastro's over there in Beverly Hills.
A lot of fun, too.
A lot of fun. You know, it's great to own great restaurants, and I love being in the gaming business. I own the 5 Golden Nugget casinos, and it's been good. It's been good.
Did you always want to be an entrepreneur?
Always. It's kind of funny, and I talk to people about this all the time, and one of the things I talk about in the book, Larry, is you got to know what you're good at, and God gave us all a gift, and I sure wasn't going to win a Grammy. I took guitar lessons for 4 years and still struggled to play a chord. I wasn't going to win an Emmy. I wasn't going to do a lot of things. I sure can't draw anything, but you know what I knew? I knew that I'd had a DNA gene of business. And when I was a little kid, I'd carry around my briefcase of business. And in junior high, I was selling candy to students. By high school, I was playing the stock market. And when I was 21, I had already won my first Cadillac selling Shackley vitamins. And I told myself when I'm 35, I'm going to have my first jet. And I'm going to be on the Forbes 400 list when I'm 50. And thank God they all happened, Larry.
Did luck play a part in it?
You always have a little luck, but you also set yourself up in a position to be lucky. And, you know, somebody asked me, what about all these tech billionaires that all of a sudden they become millionaires just because they created a little app that never was going to really be successful? But you know what? They got lucky because a bigger company bought them, but they still set themselves up by being in the right place and creating something.
Is Landry's the biggest?
Landry's is the parent company, and there's only like 30 or 40 Landry's restaurants. But like I said, I have everything from Bubba Gump to Rainforest to Mastro's to Martin's to McCormick and Schmick to Chart House. All those are mine. They're all company owned.
Mastro's too?
Yes, sir.
Wow. Dennis, he doesn't own it anymore.
No, I've owned it for almost 10 years. Almost 10 years, and grown it to be a huge group of restaurants.
You specialize in steakhouses and...
Steakhouse and seafood, a lot of seafood. Joe's Crab Shack, the Bubba Gumps are more seafood. I hit, and you know what I just bought last week was Del Frisco's. I don't know if you're familiar with it.
I eat there all the time.
Which one?
The one in New York?
Yeah, absolutely.
The one in Beverly Hills?
Sure. They just opened.
Yeah,
I bought.
I've been there 3 times.
Absolutely, they do a great job. But once again, the restaurants were very successful, but they had problems at the corporate level. And you know, you got to protect your balance sheet and you got to protect your liquidity. And what I believe in, and I talk about it in the book, Larry, you got to be an opportunist. And you know what happens when people are weak? I like to eat them. So.
After the break, we'll learn more about Tilman's road to success, how he grew up, plus what made him decide to buy the Houston Rockets. His book is Shut Up and Listen. It's available now, and we'll be right back. Our guest is Tilman Fertitta. The book is Shut Up and Listen, Hard Business Truths that will help you succeed. You were born in Galveston, Texas.
Galveston, Texas.
Grew up in Houston, always wanted to be a successful businessman, right? All right, how did that urge to be successful work for you? You had to have some failures.
I've had lots of failures, Larry, but I never had that one to bring me down. And it's kind of funny. It's kind of like borrowing money. And this is where so many people make mistakes in business and they drink their own Kool-Aid is, anytime I ever gave a bank a pro forma of borrowing money, I always did another pro forma for myself that said worst case scenario, okay? Because that's usually what happens 90% of the time. But people start drinking their own Kool-Aid and thinking that they're smarter and better than they are. And I always ran the numbers on, if it is this bad, am I going to still be able to make it through tough times? And I think that's one of the reasons I've been successful. And, you know, I talk about in this, the book, there's a paddle for everybody's ass. I have no fear, but I worry about everything. And the day that you don't think that paddle can get you, you know, it will get you.
Were you ever broke?
I was never broke because I was always conservative. Did I have tough times in the 80s and even in the 90s? Absolutely. But I was never broke. I don't ever want to be broke. That's a scary word, Larry.
What made you buy the Houston Rockets?
You know what's funny, Larry, is they were the San Diego Rockets, and I don't even know if you remember that.
A long time ago.
Long time. I was in junior high school, and I remember them coming to town, and Elvin Hayes was their big center. And I'm a big U of H person. I'm still chairman of the Board of Regents there. and they played in the game of the century. Remember Elvin and Lou Alcindor in Houston, Texas? That was the first big basketball
national
game.
telecast.
Yeah,
the biggest national telecast
ever. There'd never been anything like that before in the Houston Astrodome. And so I was since I grew up in the area, I was a big Elvin Hayes fan. And the Houston Rockets were getting moved to Houston, Texas. And so I started listening to the radio, because you didn't have the NBA on TV then, if you remember. And they moved to Houston, and I was a fan ever since. And even today, I'm like the 30th longest tenured season ticket holder. Is that not unbelievable? That's how long I've been a Houston Rocket fan. And then I was a partner between 82 and 92 when I was very young, because the team only sold for $10 million in 1982. You know how sports franchises have appreciated. 10 years later, the team sells for $85 million. I have a bid in with somebody else to buy it for $80. We lose. I sit next to Les Alexander for the next 25 years, center court, front row. He's the owner. And then I buy it 25 years later for $2.2 billion.
Why did you spend that much?
Because there's never been a sports team sell for less than it did before. And it's the one thing you can count on, is a sports teams, because of the content, and you know how important content is today, was going to always appreciate.
So the employees all over the country that you pay the most to are your basketball players.
I've got two $40 million basketball players in James Harden and Russell Westbrook, and I'm happy to have them, Larry.
Is it easy to sign those checks?
You know, the numbers have to work on any business, and it's all part of the business of that business. And with sponsorship money and ticket revenue, the numbers work, okay? Because they have to work, or you couldn't do that. And it doesn't really matter. Remember, your only cost of sales, your big cost of sales there is the players. And it's a collective bargaining agreement, and you're going to have to give, I think it's 50 and a half, something like that, to your players, and then you decide how you want to spend it.
There's a degree of socialism to it. The players can control the, right? A player on your team might take a cut to get you to sign the other guy.
That doesn't happen very often. It doesn't happen very often. So it's also kind of set up in the NBA where there's no crazy bidding, because if you are this tenured of a player and you've won an MVP or you're an all-star, this is the most you can make. That's why, like LeBron and James Harden and Russell Westbrook and all these guys and Chris Paul make a certain amount of money, but not more than anybody else. There's a bunch of them in that top category right there.
How are they going to do this year?
I think it's going to be a great, shootout in the West. I mean, it's open. I don't think this has ever happened before, but with what the Clippers did, with what Utah did, as good as Denver is, Golden State, with us having Russell and James and Clint and PJ and Eric, I think it's going to be a lot of fun this year, Larry. I think it's going to be a whole lot of fun.
How many games you go to?
I go to 40, probably out of 41 home games. You always have that one game a year that you just have a conflict that you can't get out of. In road games, probably 25%. But I love to come here in L.A. and watch the Clippers and the Lakers.
Okay, we'll be right back with more of Tilman Fertitta. The book is Shut Up and Listen. Next, we'll talk about what it takes to be a good leader. Plus, we get to know him better with a round of If You Only Knew. The book, Shut Up and Listen. We'll be right back. We're back with Tilman Fertitta. The book is Shut Up and Listen. What makes a good leader?
I'll tell you what makes a good leader. Your people have to have faith in you. And I've always said a leader always has to be the bull in the room. And they don't have to always like you, but they got to really respect you. And I can tell you this, anybody that works for me directly will tell you that is the toughest son of a gun to work for, but I would never work for anybody else. And I tell this to my people all the time. I have probably 25 VPs that answer directly to me that have worked for me for 25 years. I don't lose people that answer directly to me.
Do you think it can be inborn? Someone is a born leader?
I think so. I mean, I think that, I'm not saying you can't learn to be a leader either, Larry, but I think that God makes us all special in our own way. And just like he made you special, he made these guys special at what they do. The guy that can take the engine apart and put it back together is the smartest guy in the world. The guy that can carve something for those little cars and Boy Scouts and Cub Scouts. I couldn't do that. My kids always won because I had to pay somebody to do it because I sure couldn't do it. but I just think we all have a talent, and you have to realize what that talent is.
Why did you call it Shut Up and Listen?
When the book was being written, and first off, people don't want to listen today. And one of the reasons I think I've been successful is I've listened a lot. But we're all sitting around, and I say this kind of funny to my people sometime, and everybody has a voice in my company. I listen to my employees. And I said, would y'all just shut up and listen for a minute? And somebody said, that would be just such a great name for the book. And that's kind of how it happened, kind of accidentally. But at the same time, it's really a good book. It's very fast reading. We really worked hard on this book to make it easy reading.
It's amazing how many people don't listen. Someone asked me the key to interviewing is listening.
100%. 100%.
I never learned anything when I was talking.
You are exactly right.
Okay, we play a little game of If You Only Knew.
I'd
Just
love
throw
this.
questions at you. Biggest risk you ever took?
Buying the Rockets for $2.2 billion.
Luxury you can't live without?
My G5.
You own a G5?
2 of them.
Why do you need a second?
You know, just other people, the family, and some employees, and one's always in the shop.
Really?
Yeah, my first jet, I bought at 35 years old, and that's just a luxury I'll never give up.
And the G2 is a great plane.
G2 is a great plane, too.
Best piece of advice you ever got?
It's nice to be important. It's more important to be nice.
Worst piece of advice you ever got?
Stop growing. Why do you're making a couple of $1 million a year. Why do you want to keep growing? You're so successful.
What's something a lot of people don't understand about owning a business?
It stops with you, and you have to know all facets of the business. You might be real creative, but you better understand the operating side and the financial side. And if you're going to go into business, you better find somebody who knows the parts of it that you don't know.
Favorite restaurant?
I have to say one of mine, Mastro's or Catch.
Your favorite food?
There's nothing like a good piece of lemon pie, but there's nothing like a great steak, is there, Larry?
Lemon meringue.
Lemon meringue is as good as it gets.
Why you should serve it more. You got good restaurants. You don't serve lemon meringue.
I know it because you and I like it, but a lot of other people don't.
Biggest regret?
You know, I got asked this the other day, and I don't have a lot of regrets, but I had a chance to buy this great car collection about 25 years ago in my hometown.
Luxury cars? Vintage cars?
No, vintage cars. Tons of muscle cars, just an unbelievable collection. And you know what, Larry? I negotiated a little too hard, and I lost it, and I learned a lesson from that. If you really want something, what's the extra $50,000 or $100,000?
Favorite thing to do on a day off? Do you ever have a day off?
Yeah, I'm always working, but I love to go on my yacht and relax or sit at home and just watch basketball or football.
What's it like to know you can go by any store and buy anything? What's it like to know that?
What's it like? You don't feel the need to do it. I own the Bentley Rolls Bugatti dealership in Houston, but I always drove just a Cadillac Escalade. I don't go out and buy Brioni suits because I know I can. I did that when I made my first money 40 years, 30 years ago. Knowing that you can do it, you don't feel the need to do it, and you don't have to show off and do it.
Did you ever have a boss?
It's been a long, long time. I couldn't even tell you.
Someone dead or alive you would like to take to lunch?
Both of my grandfathers were entrepreneurs, so I definitely have the DNA. And one died when I was 3 and one died when I was 11, because back then in the 60s, you had a heart attack, they just gave you morphine and you died. I'd love to go to lunch with my 2 grandfathers.
That's awful nice. Guilty pleasure?
Lots of guilty pleasures, aren't there?
You have a lot of them, don't you?
I don't hope not. A guilty pleasure. Probably when, you know what my guilty pleasure is? On my birthday last year, I wanted Popeye's fried chicken because it's so damn fattening, and to eat those red beans and rice and to eat those rolls and
You want to buy it?
you know what? I'm mad at myself for not buying it when it was sold about 4 or 5 years ago, and that's one of my regrets, not buying Popeye's fried chicken.
One of mine too. In our final moments, Tilman will answer some of your questions from social media. Don't go away. We're back with Tilman Fertitta. The book is Shut Up and Listen, Hard Business Truths That Will Help You Succeed with his Tilmanisms. All right, we have some social media questions. Destiny Rocks on Twitter. I've been running my business the same for 30 years. I'm doing okay, but not anywhere I should be. I'm behind the times. How do I make it more relevant again? The first few steps. I sell aerospace aviation hardware.
Well, this guy's way too smart for me, but as I talk about in the book, it's change, change, change. And any business that you have, if it hasn't continued to grow and you've been doing it for 30 years, you're doing something that you haven't changed. When I bought Martin's 10 years ago, and I'm sure you ate at Martin's Steakhouse, it's great food, but they let the atmosphere in the restaurant change. They let the menu not have a much diversity to it, and you have to change, and that's what I've done better than anything else, is always change. This person needs to analyze exactly what he's selling and why. If you've been in that business 30 years, it should be growing. So he needs to figure out what he needs to change.
Leslie Howard on the Larry King Now blog. How important is social media when it comes to promoting one of your brands?
Social media is huge today, Larry. As we all know, our world has changed in front of us. And with these podcasts and social media today, if you're not on top of it, you can't grow any brand today. The old means of just advertising on television or billboards is behind the times. You have kids that don't even look at TV anymore. That's why if you look at so many of the big companies, like it's amazing the amount of kids that don't even care to subscribe because of ESPN or whatever anymore. Yeah. They do everything on their phone, and they do it that way. You have to change with multimedia today, or you are left behind.
Frank McGinnis on the Larry King Now blog. What is the next trend in restaurants?
I think that restaurants are going to continue to be more of a social gathering, where years ago, you know this, Larry, people used to just go eat for a meal, and there was nothing social about it. There was no entertainment value. It was a white wall with a picture hanging on it. Today, if you're successful, it has to be because it's a social gathering with great atmosphere and, of course, great food and service. Good food and service don't even get you there anymore. You have to do all the other things right also.
How have your goals as a businessman changed throughout the years?
Well, as you become more successful, you get more conservative, too, because you don't want to lose it. So you make sure the next deal you do is really good, and you do heavy due diligence.
And finally, what keeps driving you? What do you need another restaurant? What do you need another
hotel or another casino?
Yeah.
Because it's sport to me, Larry. This is sport to me. Just like a musician loves to keep writing music or playing their guitar or whatever. This is what I like to do every day. Why are you doing what you're doing after 61 years? Because you love it. It's sport to you, is to sit here and interview people, and you've had a great life doing it, the best ever.
Thank you, man.
Thank you, sir.
Tilman Fertitta. Make sure to check out his book, Shut Up and Listen. It's currently available online and in stores, and as always, you can find me on Twitter at King's Things. I'll see you next time.